Hello and welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher Podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Crow. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and this podcast is being recorded on the traditional territory of the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Mississauga people. I'm continuing to learn about the culture of the Anishinaabe people who lived here on Turtle Island before my ancestors because I think it's really important to learn more about that culture, the history there, as well as to learn about my own culture. And if you are new here and wondering who I am, I'm a Canadian yoga teacher, a mom of three, an entrepreneur, and a forever student who loves to ask questions. This is why I'm so grateful for podcasts, because I get to do this as a job. I get to ask questions about yoga and running a business and coping with life each and every week. And I get to talk to some amazing people from around the world. And I'm so grateful that we get to do it together. We get to hang out and learn together. So thank you so much for being here. You might already know that the podcast is powered by OfferingTree. I use and love this software in my own business because it automates my bookings, my payments, Zoom links, reminders, and so much more. And we have a special podcast listener discount code if you're checking it out and want to also use it in your own business. That's over at OfferingTree.com/Shannon. Today's episode is also brought to you by Pelvic Health Professionals. This is the other hat that I wear in business. I'm really excited about this. This is a place where movement educators, like yoga teachers, connect with healthcare professionals like pelvic floor physios or physical therapists if you're in the US. And together, we collaborate and learn the most up-to-date information regarding pelvic health. To check out our offerings around that, visit pelvichealthprofessionals.com. And if you have any questions about it, don't hesitate to reach out and ask. Now, please note that because I'm looking at so many things through the yoga lens, there's a huge focus of yoga in there. So how we can use yoga to really benefit our entire health, but also specifically pelvic health. So again, that's over at pelvichealthprofessionals.com. Now, this podcast, the entire series of podcast episodes, but along with today's episode, was made for you, the yoga teacher, because I remember what it feels like to leave a yoga teacher training, get out into the real world of teaching and running a business, and to feel like I was pretty isolated, even when I knew other yoga teachers. So I wanted a place where yoga teachers could connect to ideas, information, and to a community of supportive peers and colleagues. And I'm really excited about today's episode and then the rest of this month. If you're listening in real time, it's November 2023. For the next 4 episodes for sure, and maybe even a little bit more, we are really going to focus in on niche work. So many of you know that I love talking about specializing, niching down as yoga teachers. And I just kind of thought, wow, there's some episodes that are really powerful to help teachers with this niche work, and I'm calling it Niche November. Now, I'm extra excited about today's interview because our guest is a repeat guest from over 250 episodes ago. And I've known this person for 7 years online and been watching her journey, and it's amazing. Christine Jaureguiberry was here in episode 84 to talk about yoga for scoliosis because that's her specialty, that's her niche. And since then, Christine has continued to niche down and focus in her area of specialization. And we're going to look at how that worked and also what were some of the roadblocks that came up. So if you didn't listen to that episode 84, you can go back and learn more about Christine. She specializes in teaching yoga and Pilates for people who are living with scoliosis. She's the founder of Move with Scoliosis, born from her love of yoga and her own personal journey living with scoliosis. She has a membership, and we talk about that today. She offers workshops for yoga teachers. She offers online trainings. She has a massive YouTube channel. We're going to talk about that as well. And she is working on a book that's getting published next year. I just am so amazed at how she has taken This question that she had for me 7 years ago, how do I specialize? How do I niche down? And it is amazing to see where she is now in this journey. And she talks about how she's still thinking about niching down and how I pop into her brain in that moment. So I cannot wait for you to hear this, because honestly, when I had to listen to Christine, it inspired me to look at my own niching down and getting a little more focused and a little more clear in my own business. So here we go, diving in. But before we do that, I also want to say in our show notes, I'll share some past episodes about niching down, because I do talk about this a lot. And then make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you get the next 3 episodes that are coming out about other yoga teachers who have niched down. And then at the end of the month, I'm going to answer some of your questions about niching down. If you have questions that you want to send me, there is a voicemail button on our website. Make sure you're signed up for our email. You can reply to any email and ask me questions, or join our Facebook group for yoga teachers. Head on over to theconnectedyogateacher.com and you'll see all of that information there. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast, Christine. It's so great to have you here and to have you back.
Yes.
After years of chatting.
I know. How exciting. Thank you so much for having me.
I wanted our listeners to really hear like a niche story that goes through the years. We were just chatting before we hit record that it was like 2017 when we first started working together and you started niching down. But before we get there, tell us, what is your niche? What's the work that you do and who do you do it for?
Yes. So I teach yoga and now Pilates as well for those who have scoliosis. So it's mainly adults who have maybe gone through bracing, or who've had treatment when they were kids, and now they're adults. Maybe they haven't had any problems during their kind of young adult years, and now they're starting to have problems with their scoliosis. So that's where I help them with practices with yoga and Pilates.
That's amazing. And I'm really excited that I heard you say you're writing a book. That'll be out sometime in 2024. You've grown a massive YouTube channel. How many subscribers do you have on your YouTube channel?
Oh, I've got over 30,000 now at the moment, I believe. So, yes, it's gone really well.
That's amazing. And you also have a membership.
Yes. So that's something that I've been running for about 3 years now, probably. And yeah, it kind of developed out of all the offerings and online courses and things that I was offering. And then, yeah, I eventually kind of thought I need something that is a little bit more stable and predictable. And I thought a membership is such a great thing to do. And obviously, I watched you do it as well with your membership. So you've been a great inspiration for that as well.
And so then who is your membership for?
So my membership really it's a yoga and Pilates for scoliosis membership. So we've got all sorts of resources on there. We've got expert interviews, workshops with different people in the field. So it's not just actually yoga, but it's all movement based. So I rebranded at some stage into Move with Scoliosis, because I found that yoga wasn't quite explaining enough of what I do. And so it's kind of a place for people who want a continuous yoga practice, who've got scoliosis and want something that is good for their bodies and that is good for improving their posture. Obviously, with scoliosis, there come different challenges. And for those who really want something really, really specific and targeted, and maybe learn about scoliosis a little bit more as well along the way.
That's fantastic. So can you remember back when we first chatted sometime in 2017, what sort of the struggle you were feeling at the time, like what made you decide, okay, it's time to niche down, it's time to specialize with my yoga business?
Yes, gosh, yeah. So thinking back, 2017. So I had been teaching yoga for just a couple of years, and I was really at that stage where I was trying everything. So I had done my teacher training. I had done all the different courses. I was kind of experimenting with. I loved teaching children. My kids were little then; they're still smallish, but not as little anymore. Um, so I loved teaching kids yoga, family yoga. I also was teaching postnatal yoga at that point because, again, I could kind of relate back to when I was at that stage. I loved teaching beginners. I loved teaching people with specific back problems, and then I obviously had this interest at that point. It was just an interest of working with people with scoliosis because that's what brought me to yoga initially. So I had all these different pieces and all these different things, and I just felt I needed a little bit of direction, and I wasn't quite sure how to get there. So that's how I think I mentioned it before. So I listened to a podcast where you were a guest on, and you were talking about this topic of niching down, and then you were offering a workshop at that point, and then I thought, well, I think that's what I need. That's the that sounds like me. I think you were at some point. There was one thing you said about um, and you will probably remember this. It's like being a hummingbird and going from having all these different interests and just not quite being able to find or yeah, find what you actually want to do and then what you want to go for.
Oh my gosh, you're bringing me back to like all the things that I could learn about niching down. It might have been something that Brene Brown said. I can't remember, but I remember watching this thing of like, yeah, if you're going to pollinate all kinds of projects as a hummingbird, or if you focus on one thing, the difference in that.
Hmm.
Connected yoga teachers, I looked up the video about hummingbirds versus jackhammers and I'll link to it in the show notes. It's worth listening to. I was wrong. It was Elizabeth Gilbert who talked about it. And it's a great thing to listen to if you're wanting to focus on something, or if you are like me and Christine and you're multi passionate and you kind of buzz around more like a hummingbird. It's important to just be aware that this is kind of one viewpoint of how we go into things like this and whether we are more focused or less focused, and there's not one that's better than the other. Now, this is a video that I definitely turn to when I'm looking at, okay, how could I move a little further in this or feel less scattered? I try and embrace the jackhammer energy for sure. Okay, so then do you remember any of the challenges with niching down? Like when you were like, okay, I'm going to
Oh yes.
niche down. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. There was a huge block around this. So there were a couple of pieces there. So one of the things was letting go of things. And I said that to you as well. Whenever I now decide to let go of something, I think of you. Because I think back of, this time and what would Shannon say to me right now? Um, because that's what I found really, really difficult, because I had all these classes I was teaching and I loved all of them. And then maybe there was things that I kind of found challenging about it, or there were reasons why I did kind of want to let go of it, but wasn't quite sure. And I think one of them was, as a yoga teacher, to let people down. I think that was kind of a big thing of, I'm teaching this postnatal yoga class. I think that was the first one I actually let go of. And everybody really enjoys this class. And those ladies, they really need me, and they, what's going to happen if I don't teach that class? And there was a huge resistance around this. And I think one of the things you said to me was like, well, maybe this is an opportunity for another teacher to, take this over. And that's exactly what happened. So I found someone great in my area who was very new to teaching, and she really wanted to have that opportunity. She had just done a postnatal yoga training class, and she was delighted that she could take it over. The people in the children's center where I was teaching, they were delighted that it would just carry on as well. So it was kind of a win-win situation in the end. But yes, at the time there was a huge kind of block around this. I found that really difficult.
And so what's interesting, you said that when you still let things go, you think of me. So this, like, I feel like we interviewed you back in episode 84. So it's a long time ago. And I feel like you had your niche then. So you're still, and this is what I often say on the podcast, like niche work doesn't end. You're still letting things go.
Mm.
Can you talk about like why that is? Why, when you've chosen a niche, why are you still like looking at letting things go?
Well, yeah. So the most recent one was actually was a general yoga class that I was still teaching. So I think it just continues. So it took me a while this was another one, because you talked about challenges before. This was another one of my challenges, was to fully commit to this work that I was doing, because I'm a little bit like you, I think, in this sense as well. I have got many interests, and there's lots of different projects that excite me. And definitely at that time, I did not consider myself to be an expert in this field of teaching those with scoliosis. That's where I wanted to go. That's what I wanted to be. But I just saw all the things that I still have to learn, and all the things that I didn't know. So it kind of took me a long time to actually consider myself as somebody, well, no, I do know a lot of things, and I have got a lot of things to share, and I there's a lot of value in those things that I'm sharing. So that was kind of one of those pieces, or one of those challenges. But then it continued to, well, then what are the things that I'm offering? And then obviously we had COVID as well, right? We had the pandemic. So everything changed, like the way that we were teaching changed. So I started everything was online at some point, which suited me, because that's kind of where I wanted to go anyway. And I was reaching people from all over the world. But then there was my YouTube channel. I was offering online courses. I was still teaching my general class during the pandemic. I was still teaching a kids yoga class because I had my kids at home.
Right.
So it just felt like something natural to do. So I even though I did niche down, I had all these offerings still. So I think it's just a process that you have to kind of go through over and over again, and think of all the things that you do, and what is it that you actually want to do. And maybe also, if you're thinking about running a business, what is the biggest return at the end of the day? So just purely from a business sense, at some point it didn't make sense for me to keep some of those maybe smaller classes where I didn't actually have that many people in them. Just focusing all my attention into this one thing, which then this year, when I niched down again, became my membership. So that's really what I focused on.
That's amazing. I want to highlight a few things. One, you said at first you didn't feel at all like the expert. You were still really learning about scoliosis, even though you had experienced it in your body for a long time. And you knew a lot more than, the average yoga teacher coming out of a 200-hour yoga teacher training. I think that's a common thing that people can think, well, how could I be the expert? It can't be me. Like, it's got to be someone else that does this. And now look at you. You have this huge YouTube channel, a membership. This is what you focus on and teach. And also you're writing a book about it.
Mm.
And I'm curious. Okay, so I'm going to come back to that question. I have a question about like being seen as an expert. Okay, but the other thing that you said was that you still held on to those things. And I think that's a common misconception of like, I'll have to let all of these things go when I niche down, which is something that I really struggle with as well. I'm like, no, I have these interests. I'm going to keep doing these. But then there is a point where you're like, okay, that would be the next thing on the list that would go. Hey, connected yoga teachers, I have a quick note that I want to share with you about memberships. So Christine and I both have a membership. In case you're new to this idea or this business model, think of how Netflix works. But instead of a library of movies and TV shows, it's a library of yoga practice. Your students pay monthly generally, but you can set it up in different ways. And they get access to the videos that you add in there. Some people have a live component, some people have everything pre-recorded. If you are thinking about creating a membership, make sure to check out OfferingTree. In there, you can upload videos, PDFs, audio files, text, so many ways that you can share information with your students. And OfferingTree takes care of the registrations and payments and automatic emails or text reminders and Zoom links, all of the things needed, whether you're sharing live classes or pre-recorded videos as part of a membership model. So if you've been looking for an easier way to run the online part of your yoga business, make sure to check out OfferingTree. It's an easy, all-in-one tool to host your website, schedule classes and private lessons, and to also host everything needed for a membership. We have a special discount code. If you head over to offeringtree.com/Shannon, you can get 15% off for the full year or 50% off for the first 3 months. That's offeringtree.com/Shannon. Now let's get back to our chat with Christine. Okay, so my question about expertise. Do you now feel like I'm an expert in yoga for scoliosis or movement for scoliosis?
Well, I mean, writing this book, brought up another huge can of worms and things, obviously blocks, it's something that I think that again, it just continues. And yes, I ask myself, should I be writing this book? Why is it me, right? I'm sure somebody else can write a much better book on this, or maybe some other people have already written a much better book, which is why I think it took me such a long time. So this has been probably in my head for the last probably 3 years, that I will at some point write a book about this. But yes, there was always this, I don't know enough. I don't have all the qualifications. I'm not this, I'm not that. I'm not a physiotherapist. I'm not a medical professional. So it does continue, but I think at some point there was, I don't know if it's just this inner voice. It said it just wouldn't go. It wouldn't go away. There was always this nagging thing that, like, no, it always kept coming back. I do need to write this book, and fine, if nobody reads it, that's okay with me, but I do need to write it.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Letting go of all expectations of like how many people are going to read it. And also, you said there was just this inner voice. There's that saying of like, I forget who first said it around me, when your message becomes louder than your fear. And I
Mm-hmm.
just like that's how I started the podcast 7 years ago. And I was thinking, well, who am I to be the one talking? Well, you don't have to have all of the answers. You just have to have really good questions. And the more you learn, the more questions you'll have, I think. And so I
Yes.
would caution people who are like, I want to learn from the top expert in this thing. Once you go and talk to that person who you think is the top expert, oftentimes they're like, well, it's not like I know everything about this. I'm still learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think me having so on my YouTube channel, I do have a live stream. I had a regular live stream, which I then turned into a podcast. And I kind of used this to ask questions. So I invited all these people that I admired and that I thought, well, they have all the answers. I invited them in on into these interviews. And I think just after a while, I realized, well, they don't have all the answers either, right?
Yeah.
They also still learning. And sometimes they say, well, I don't know. And then sometimes they even said, well, I think, Christine, you can explain this much better than I can. And I was like, what? Why are you saying this? And and I think that's when it kind of all came together. And I think you're right in just being able to ask really good questions is such a useful thing, and really helps you along the journey for sure.
That's so true. I also want to highlight what you said is that you had an interest in this. Like you were really curious about learning more. And also, you'd had your own experience of dealing with scoliosis.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what was the fuel for this. So we never really know what that's going to be sometimes. Like I certainly didn't know, if you would have told me as a new yoga teacher, oh, yeah, you're really going to geek out about all things pelvic health, I wouldn't have believed someone. Um,
No,
but as I
no,
got,
and I think I needed that push as well. So I think this was something I remember when we went through this whole niching down process, and there were various exercises in the workshop that you were offering. I kind of had all the things that I was qualified to do. So like teaching kids, um, pregnancy yoga, postnatal yoga. Like I had done the trainings. I could teach that. And there was a tiny little bit which was like, but I really, really want to help people with scoliosis. And somehow, I don't know if you openly said it, but you kind of said, well, just go for that then, because that's clearly what you want to do.
yeah, it was interesting because I could see how excited you got about that topic.
Mm. Yes.
Sometimes it takes like that outside person to be like, well, what if you tried it on, just for a
Mm.
little bit and saw.
Yes. And it's funny, isn't it? It's almost like we need somebody else's permission to do this thing that we clearly have inside of us. So I am forever grateful that you gave me that little push, obviously. And it started with literally just because you did say, you don't have to do everything. As you say, you don't have to let go of everything and put all your eggs in one basket. No, you can just say every week, I'm going to read an article about scoliosis, or I'm going to read a little bit on. In my case, it became every week I'm going to share a yoga practice for scoliosis that has helped me. That's how it started. So that was back in 2017, and it was literally me recording this on my phone and then going to take my children to their karate classes, editing this video, not knowing much about how to do these YouTube things, and then posting it on YouTube. That was it. And that's literally where it started. And that's how then there were the comments coming in. There were people who started watching this and they were like, oh, Thank you so much. I was looking everywhere and I couldn't find any information about this. And then here's your video, and me thinking, well, this is a really bad quality video, but obviously helped someone. So great. I keep doing it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I hope that's inspiring for our listeners. Is there anything else that helped you along the way? Or can you remember any other sort of roadblocks that came up where you're like, okay, here's a tough spot, but here's how I got through that with your niche?
Again, I think I think it comes up all the time. Um, I think whenever things change, obviously, whenever we kind of have to reevaluate. Obviously, life gets in the way as well sometimes. So at some point, we decided to move house, right? And we moved out of the area. So I had to kind of rethink, how is this going to work now? What am I going to do? So yeah, I think it's just a constant reflection and evaluating what is it that I'm doing, what is it that I'm offering, and also how does it fit into my life. I think so. That balance, I think, is just really important to make this a sustainable thing. Because what I didn't want was that I would burn out, right? That I would niche down so much and really focus on this one thing, and then maybe that's always my biggest fear, that I get bored of it, right? That I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
I've done too much of it, or it's too much work, I can't, and I'm just gonna skip it all and stop doing that. And with my YouTube channel, there were times when I was like, this is hard work, right? This is taking over my life, and I don't know if I can keep that up in this way that I've been doing this.
What did you do in those tough times? Because I think we all hit that in business, no matter what it is. I've talked openly on the podcast about being like, oh my gosh, am I just going to quit? What helped you, or like, what did you shift or change in that time?
I think just like a little bit of stepping back is, so my initial response would have been to like stop, right, and say, I'm just gonna crawl under a rock and hide away from the world. And sometimes it's good to take a break, right? So you can say, especially when I was doing these, so I was doing weekly interviews at some point, and it just became really, really difficult to keep up. And I then said, look, I'm just going to take a break. I'm going to say 2 months, you're not going to see any new interviews from me, because I need to kind of reassess, reevaluate what I'm going to do. So that's definitely just having this freedom, I guess, of, when you're your own boss, you can take those decisions, which is great, right? You can say, well, actually, I just need a little bit of time for myself, and I need to reassess what I actually want to do, and what is realistic of me doing. So that's one of the things, just having that freedom to do that. And then the other thing is getting help, right? So me getting a VA was the biggest change in my business. So just having that extra support, of having someone who's got my back.
Connected yoga teachers, I wanted to pop in here for a moment in case you haven't heard of a VA, also known as a virtual assistant. We have a great podcast about how to find a VA. I'll link to that in the show notes, or you can always go to our website and in the search bar at the top, just type in virtual assistant or VA, and you should find the podcast where we talk about that. That's how I find episodes. I go over to the website and I search and look for it in that way. Alrighty, let's get back to our conversation with Christine.
So I've got my VA who does all the things that I find not difficult, but that I find draining, that kind of suck the life out of me, because usually they're repetitive things that I find relatively boring to do, but they need to be done, right? And they were just taking over, and a lot of things I was getting overwhelmed with comments, with emails, right? So people were sending me their X-rays left, right, and center. When I was saying, look, I'm not a doctor. Hello, I'm not a doctor.
Right.
But I was getting all these people saying, well, look at my spine. What yoga should I be doing?
Oh, wow.
So,
and in that, the email is basically the same, I'm not a doctor, blah, blah, blah. Like you'd
yes,
have a canned email response. You just need a VA to go through and do that.
exactly. I just needed her to say, look, there's the standard response. This is what I can do. This is what I can't do. If you want to book a one-to-one session with me or with Christine, then you can do that here. So that just made the biggest difference, really. So just having her back up, really, and still today, every time I pay her, I'm so happy to give her money, and I'm like, why doesn't she ask for more money? Because really,
Right. That's fantastic. It's really great. I love that you said like asking for help when you get to the point in your business, because that really does make a difference when you're stuck in those small draining tasks. You can't be as creative.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just very, very difficult to then keep going and keep yourself motivated, right? To do this.
Yeah.
So so far, touch wood, I haven't come to the point where I'm like, this is not right.
Well, that's
I
pretty
need to
amazing.
do
7
something
years
else.
7 years of doing it and 7 years of creating
Yeah.
content about it.
And I think also one of the things is, the hummingbird is still in me, right? I still have this, I have all these different interests, and I have all these, I get excited about lots of different things. But I think because I know it, because I recognize this now, I can kind of use it in a different way. So it might be that I explore different ways of offering, or like, for example, at the latest project I had was working on creating this quiz for all these people who are like, wow, Christine, you've got 300 YouTube videos. Which ones should I be watching here? Which one is for me? So I just created this quiz with a few questions that people can answer, and then it kind of leads them into an automation, so they get some emails with some recommended videos for them. So just a place to start. So this was a really fun project for me, which kind of, because I do love all these little bits and pieces. I love being creative, but I don't change my topic anymore. I stay with the same topic.
Right. Oh, that's fascinating. I love this whole quiz idea. It's making me think about the podcast because we have over 300 episodes now. And yeah, people are like, where should I even start? Like, oh my
Yes.
gosh, it really depends what you want to do. Work on your business or like yoga philosophy.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
exactly. And then it gives you, it's very interesting for me to see the results, right? So I've got 6 categories basically of people, what they fall into. And it helps me to obviously provide all the relevant content. And then it helps them obviously to navigate all the pieces of content that I have as well, making it all a little bit more useful for them as well.
Is there anything that you would tell the yoga teacher who like has this vision of, you know, teaching online, having a YouTube channel, having a membership, doing something in this capacity, but they're at that starting point where they're like, well, I don't even know what my niche would be. I don't even know what my specialty would be or like what film equipment to have or all those thoughts that come up. What would
Mm.
you tell them in terms of like what's the first baby step?
I think the first baby step is um, doing that work of what is it that you actually want, and that what you are drawn to and what you want to share, because that's what it starts with. And I think once you start to just think about, because once you start teaching, you just want to help, right? You and people might have all these questions, and you could probably help a lot of different people. And then sometimes people say, oh, you could, my company would really like some corporate yoga classes. Yes, of course I could do that. I could go to your company and teach a yoga class. But what is it that I actually want? What is it really that makes me tick, or that really makes me feel excited? And I think we all have something. I think we all know it deep down. But it just sometimes it takes that work, right? So I don't know if you still offer your amazing workshop.
You're making me think maybe I should dig out.
Maybe you
I'd
should dig it
definitely
out, right?
revamp it, but I do have I'd be cringing at it, I think, right now. But I could improve it and bring it out again.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely. You
still
could improve it. But there were some great exercises in there. Um, so I think that's where it all starts. And then in terms of getting overwhelmed with all the things that you can do, there's this great book, and I think it's probably one of your recommendations as well, the one thing.
oh, yes.
Oh yes. So just pick one thing, right? You just pick one thing, and you don't have to do it forever. So, for example, with my YouTube channel, this whole thing of I'm going to post a video every week. Initially, I said I'm going to do this for 3 months and I see what happens. To be honest, not much happened after 3 months. But after 3 months, I was like, actually, I'm getting pretty good at this. I can keep going with that. It's sustainable, right? And I find it fun. I enjoy it. So I'm going to keep going with it. And I think really that consistency is obviously eventually, it did take some time. This is another thing. Sometimes the things don't happen obviously overnight, and maybe not as quickly as we want them to happen.
Right.
So we do have to stick with it, which I think is really hard, which is difficult at times. But if you do keep going with it, you will, whatever you choose, you will get better at it. And honestly, I made so many mistakes, and I made so many times that I pressed record and my audio didn't record on my YouTube video. There were some videos I had to film 3 times over. But it's what made it better in the end. It's what helped me over time as well. So I think if you commit to that journey and stay consistent with it, you will get there. You will get somewhere.
That's amazing. And so then what are the benefits that you see now for your
Mm-hmm.
business and the way you feel in your business now that you've really established your niche really well?
Well, I mean, for me, for this particular niche, it's really opened doors for me. definitely. And let's see, when I was first teaching it, I was like, how would I even be? Are there even enough people? That was probably one of the main things, right? If I say no to the pregnant ladies and the postnatal ladies and the kids and the families and the general back pain population, are there actually going to be enough people for me to teach? And I think this is where it's completely the opposite, right? It's once I did have this niche, I got all these people who were like, where other yoga teachers might have said, well, I can teach someone with scoliosis. Of course you can, right? But they wanted someone who is specialized in it. They wanted someone who just looks after people who've got scoliosis. So I actually had a lot more clients once I started kind of deciding that this is who I'm going to help, and those people really, really, really appreciated this, and they were really like, wow, I didn't even know that there were people out there who would dedicate their time to just helping people like me I've never met anyone else with scoliosis. This was another thing, right? That so many people felt isolated. So again, it kind of it helped me bring in many more people than I would have, in a way, if I had just kept going with teaching everyone.
Right.
Which is
Oh my
interesting. It's
gosh.
very
It is.
counterintuitive.
It's fascinating. What about the marketing side of things? How did it
Mm.
make you feel in terms of, oh gosh, what am I going to put out there? What am I going to say in my email or what am I going to do?
What do you mean in terms of
Like
speaking?
before with your marketing and maybe your
Mm.
email or what you were putting out there in terms of content? How did it shift from when you had all of these general classes to now you're talking about yoga for scoliosis?
Yeah, it made it so much easier. Everything is easier. I mean, my social media became so much easier. So my YouTube channel was always just yoga for scoliosis, but my Instagram was fairly general. And I really struggled to grow it, in a way, because then I was talking about teaching children, and then I was talking about this and was talking about that. And I think people were just a little bit confused.
Right.
Unless they knew me, obviously, personally and had actually met me, um, there wasn't like one thing. Why would they follow me? Especially because I was just switching around all the time of different things that I was talking about. Um, so once I did make that decision and say, no, it's going to be called Move with Scoliosis, it was very easy for people to say yes or no. I'm going to follow you, or I'm not going to follow you, right? I like what you're talking about, or I'm not really interested in what you're talking about. So I think in terms of marketing, it makes everything a lot easier when you just have a small subject that you're talking about. You can get very, very personal, and people will go like, oh my gosh. Or even if I share a story about a client, they will go like, oh, wow, that's me. That's me. I can see myself there. What you're saying, that's exactly me. Um, so yes, it does make everything easier.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I also love how then you branched out and learned Pilates, and now that's part of it. So even
Yes.
though you niched down and you still have this specialty, you could add in more things.
Yeah, I'm actually going a little bit broader again, in a way, because I actually went from my business was called Jaureguiberry initially, and I changed it to Move with Scoliosis, because I felt that actually it's movement, what I'm teaching, what I'm interested in, what I'm talking about. I don't really mind what exactly it is. Like, I love Pilates as well. I think as we get older, especially the element of using weights and like doing strength training is really, really important. So we can bring that in, obviously, as well. Really important for those with scoliosis and osteoporosis. So, yeah, I kind of went a little bit broader in that sense, but I'm still kind of staying in my niche. And as you say, I can still fuel that little hummingbird that wants to explore all these different things and wants to learn about all these different things.
This is amazing. This is inspiring me to like reevaluate. So I'm curious if our connected yoga teacher listeners want to share, like in the comments, their questions about niching down, if they think I should brush off the the niche down workshop. And then if they are feeling inspired as well, because I think we can always reevaluate and look at, okay, what could I let go of? What would I really like to focus on and try out for a little bit? I did an episode
Mm,
also on like just try this on for the next month. So
yes.
that's a good baby step.
Yeah, and I think that is really helpful because it can be scary to say, well, either no, I'm not going to do this ever again, or I'm only going to do this one thing. Both of them are scary, I think.
Yeah.
So it feels much more comfortable to say, okay, what if I just do this or let go of it? Even with my general yoga class now, which was a class I had for, well, since I started teaching, really, since I started teaching yoga, so 8 years. And it took me such a long time. And there were people I really loved working with and really enjoyed that class. But I did say, I was like, I just need that time back and I need to focus on my membership. It doesn't mean I will never, ever teach it again. Who knows? Maybe I don't know. In a few months' time, maybe I've missed it so much that I would say, "Oh, I'll put it on again," right? And if those people are really interested, they will come back as well. So
Right. There's
it's
always that
not.
option.
That's always the option, yes. And I don't think I will do that, but just thinking that I've got this option is just very comforting.
I love it. I feel you on this, as someone who, like, let some things go that were really close to my heart over the years. So, thank you so much for sharing all of this today, and for the work that you're doing. It's amazing. We'll make sure to link to your website, your YouTube channel, and all of your socials in the, show notes. And so if yoga teachers are working with people who have scoliosis, they can connect them to you.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I do have a little training for yoga teachers as well. So it's a 4 hour training, which is all self studies online, an online course. So that's just a great way if you feel like you don't quite know if somebody has a severe scoliosis or even a spinal fusion, which can be a little bit tricky, obviously, to work with. Then that's a great little workshop that you can do, obviously, to help you.
That's amazing. I'll make sure to link to that as well. Thank you so much, Christine.
Thank you so much, Shannon. It's been really, really nice chatting with you again. And yeah, bringing back so many memories as well.
Same, same. Thank you so much, Christine, for sharing all of this. As I said earlier in the intro, before our interview, I felt so inspired after listening to this. And I actually went back and re-listened to the audio, which I do. I just like to make sure that the audio is nice and clean and we take out anything that, like, if a dog barks or something. But as I was re-listening to this audio, I felt so inspired. And that's what actually inspired this Niche November thought. I had done a recent episode on trying on a niche for a month. And then when you and I talked, then I thought, okay, I'm really going to do this on the podcast. Why don't I talk about niching down and highlight teachers who have been doing the niche work for the whole month of November? Connected yoga teachers, I want to hear from you. Did this episode with Christine inspire you? If it did, share in our Facebook group for Connected Yoga Teachers, or go over to our show notes page and share there. Maybe you have a question about niching down. Maybe you thought of something. Maybe you want to tell us how you're going to niche down. You can find the show notes over at theconnectedyogateacher.com/349. Also, make sure to rate, review, share the podcast with a friend, and make sure that you subscribe if you haven't already so that you don't miss an episode, especially this month as we're talking more about niching down. If you want to hang out in real time, we have some amazing guest speakers coming into Pelvic Health Professionals, our membership. November the 6th, we're talking about stress, the nervous system, and the pelvic floor. In December, we have a guest speaker who was on the podcast recently, Tyla. Tyla was talking about yoga for the cancer community, and we're going to get even more specialized, even more niche down in this talk. It's going to be all about pelvic health and cancer. And then in January, Lauren O'Hayan is coming in to talk about the pelvic floor and the foot connection. Visit pelvichealthprofessionals.com to check that out and to sign up as a member if it feels like a good fit for you. Next week on the podcast, I'm so excited that Shawnee is going to be talking to us about yoga for autism and special needs. This is definitely a niche within yoga, and I cannot wait to share this interview with you. Thank you so much to our amazing team over here, Suzanne Crunch and Sinead, for all of the work that you do, not only for our podcast. Gosh, I feel like I'm choking up here. Not only for our podcast and the Connected Yoga Teacher community, but I also really see the work that you're doing out in the world of really caring for humans and animals and the earth. And I'm just, as you can tell, I'm a little bit emotional just thinking about all of them. They're amazing people. If you want to check them out, you can head over to our website. We share our team photo and bios, and you can connect with them there over at theconnectedyogateacher.com. Click on the About page. I also want to say a huge thank you to you, dear listener, for being here and making this podcast possible. I am so grateful for that. It has been almost 7 years of podcasting, and I owe that to you. I have learned so much along the way. I continue to learn, and I'm so grateful that you're here for this journey of learning together. As usual, I want to leave you with a question. What will you be doing this week to stay connected to yourself, your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up?